Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Crescent Sound podcast, where I give you a platform to express your struggle stories. You can either email me your stories on thecrescentsound@gmail.com and I present them on the podcast for you, or I can have you come on as a guest on the podcast and you can tell your story by yourself. Anyways, I'm your host, Luna, and let's begin with today's episode. Oh my god, today is the first actual episode for the Crescent Sound. I'm so excited for this, and I've been waiting all week to release this episode. Since this is a very, very special episode being the first, we also have a very special entry by a good friend of mine. They're very fun, and I think they're a really cool person. I will also not be saying their name for the sake of their anonymity, but I would like to tell you that I'm so proud of you for coming out and speaking about this, even if you are not the one directly telling the story. So, yeah, I'll be presenting their submission to you, and I hope if any of you resonate with this story, then my empathy and my heartfelt compassion goes out to you. Before we begin, I would like to put out a trigger warning as there will be mentions of sexual abuse. If you would like to avoid such themes or topics, I advise you to skip this episode. And finally, let's begin. I vividly remember it happened on 16th November 2023. I was living at my grandmother's place because both of my parents were away at a relative's wedding. I'd come back from my competition and I was over the moon because I'd practically aced my performance there. And the same day, my uncle, my father's elder brother who lived abroad, had come back to India. He was supposedly an alcoholic with severe mental health issues, which only presented when he was drunk. He had several conflicts with landlords, his roommates, and cousins who lived there. My grandmother and mother had practically begged my father and grandfather to call him back to India and help him with said addictions. When I reached back home and found him sitting on the couch, I had grown wary of him since his last visit in 2020 because during that visit was the first time he assaulted me. I didn't think much of it because when he did that, he was absolutely drunk. While my grandma was just too happy about his return, she made me hug him, and so I did. His touches felt off to me, but I acted normal for my grandmother's sake. Later, the same night at 9:15 p.m., my grandmother took both my sister and me to his room to give him some company so that he won't feel alone. We chatted for around 15 minutes, and my sister went out, shouting for my grandmother to come out and help her out with something. I was about to follow them out, but my grandma asked me to accompany him. Just to make her happy, I stayed inside, sitting across from him. When she asked me to go near him and sit alongside him, I went and sat beside him, and then she left, leaving me alone with him. Soon, he started talking about his ex wife and how she took custody of his children during their divorce. His voice was aggressive, and I felt scared inside. And then he asked me to lay beside him. I politely declined, but then he pulled me down and held me by my waist. I couldn't really do anything and just let it happen. I was uncomfortable from the whole situation while he just kept whispering things near my shoulder, and me, afraid as I was, just continued with everything he said. And suddenly he grabbed my chin and tried pulling me to his face. The shock left me absolutely motionless. Out of reflex, I tried to push him away from his shoulders, but my strength wasn't enough to successfully create distance between us. After a few seconds, he let go of my face, and I laid there motionless with my heart trembling inside of my chest. While I was processing what happened to me, his hand suddenly felt around my body. He started saying something to me which was a blur to me until I came back to my senses and tried to leave. He pulled me once again and said, "What our relationship has become shall stay between us," and tried to kiss me once again, but I pushed him away and came out of the room. Without saying anything, I went inside the bathroom, absolutely weeping, and questioned myself. Should I keep this to myself, or tell my mother everything? Well, the story's over, I'm just speechless. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And I want you to know that it was not your fault in any way. And your uncle is absolutely disgusting for what he did. It's heinous and absolutely unforgivable. I hope you never have to see your uncle ever again and he ends up behind bars. And no, just because he's your family or he was mentally ill or under the influence, it does not mean you should forgive him. He is a disgusting excuse of a human who deserves hell. Um, that was it for today's episode, and I will be ending it here. Thank you for listening, and I'm your host, Luna. Thank you for watching this episode of The Crescent Sound. I hope you enjoyed and continue visiting this channel for more uploads. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to know immediately when I upload, and follow me on Instagram for updates on the coming episode for the Crescent Sound podcast.